What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Hard Work Beats Talent, where we aim to draw upon the insights of our inner circle in order to help our listeners make more informed decisions about their career and life through the wisdom and mistakes made by us, as well as our guests throughout our journeys. I'm Alex, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Nikita.
Yo, yo.
On today's episode, we are joined by a very good friend and member of our inner circle, Rachael.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome, Rach.
Thank you very much. Pleased to be here.
We're pleased to have you. So, just to kick off, do you mind giving us a little elevator pitch about who you are, what you do, and all that kind of good stuff?
So I'm a financial regulations lawyer. So for those of you who don't know what that is, and I certainly didn't when I started out in my career, I advise all types of businesses on financial regulations. So I specialize in the retail market. So that's advising banks, insurers, funds, all types of regulated businesses on the financial services laws and regs that apply to them. I also I work with a lot of businesses whose business isn't in financial regulations. So more recently, I've worked with a few football clubs. I've worked with healthcare providers. So all sorts of things, very varied.
Awesome.
Nice. That sounds good. So can you, for the benefit of our listeners, give a little bit of an overview of what it is like being a financial regulation solicitor day to day?
Yeah, so it's really varied. I do advisory work, so that's so I don't do contentious work. So you'd never find me in court fighting a battle. And I don't sit on the corporate side, so I don't do a lot of transactions or corporate support, although I have been known to do some of that in the past. So what I do is advise clients.
Just on that, because mindful some of our guests might not be as down with the lingo as say we are. We've been doing it for a few years, but by corporate you mean advising companies on transactions, buying and selling.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. So my work is mainly advisory. So a client comes to me and says, I have this particular question or I have this particular problem, and my job is to help them navigate the very, very complex set of rules and regulations that underpin their businesses. It's very varied. So I'll do anything from structuring of a product. So what I mean by that is that a bank might come to me and say, we're looking to offer this new type of savings account. What are the rules that apply to it? How should we structure it? How do we structure the actual terms and conditions that our customers see? I'll also help them if they need to get authorized by the financial services regulator. And more recently, on the sort of sexier side of financial regulation, if there is such a thing, I have been working quite a lot in the crypto space. So yeah, it's very, very varied. I have lots of really lovely clients that come with lots of interesting questions. So no 2 days are the same.
Yeah, that's really interesting, especially on the crypto side, because I think probably something that's coming down the line, the old regulation of the crypto, and we have a good conversation on that maybe with Bio as well, one of our other guests.
No, I mean, it's the one of the things I really like about my job is that, even in the short time that I've been in the industry, things have changed so much. Like we saw a lot of change because of the financial crisis and all of the fallout from that, and the rules and laws that were put in place to protect people and to stop the risk of, a single group of businesses being able to crash the entire economy. And then we just
hashtag 2008.
Hashtag 2008. And then we had Brexit. And so Brexit completely changed the landscape of my job. And now I'm in this sort of fallout where we're trying to work out what Brexit means for our clients and what it means to be participating in a more UK-centric market. And then we're having all these new types of products emerging because of changes in technology. And it's really difficult to keep abreast of the pace of change, but it makes my job very exciting.
Sounds it.
Awesome. So you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but can you just bring to life some of the key skills that you have to apply, and whether those were skills that came naturally to you or some things you developed over time?
So I think that primarily you have to be somebody that's detail orientated. And I do think that comes naturally to me. I am somebody that, is very involved in the detail of things. I'm quite a diligent person. So detail orientated, I'd say, is the first thing. I think you have to be very collaborative. It's not a solo sport. It's a team sport, my job. I work with lots of different lawyers. I get to work with lots of different clients and then lots of different people within our clients. So it's a very varied job. So you have to be quite adaptable. You have to be very patient, I think, with my job. You can have a seemingly simple question come across your desk and it can take you 3 days to find the answer. So you have to have perseverance and confidence in your ability that you will eventually find the solution that's right for your client.
And also that being detail orientated loops in with the patience piece.
Oh, 100%.
Because, I'd imagine there's a lot of time that you spend reading, writing reports or drafting advice.
Yeah.
What does that kind of look like?
So, well, it really depends. I get to draft lots of different types of things, but if I'm taking my sort of day-to-day, I'll have to draft a piece of advice. So you, at a very basic level, have to spend quite a lot of time looking at the law, looking at the particular fact pattern and then applying that. So I'm quite a methodical person, so it's quite nice for me because I get, I can very easily lay things out quite clearly and I get to follow a pattern, and there's no sort of magic answer to these things. It is just a case of being very methodical in how you approach things. But on the flip side of that, I might the next day be drafting some contract terms and conditions, or I might be drafting some commercial terms. So I get to do lots of different types of drafting. I do try to avoid drafting commercial documents because I find them very painful.
But I think if we look at it from the perspective of, say, like a 20-year-old university student, like writing by the sounds of it, and being patient, having attention to detail with your writing, and being able to analyze and distill information, very important hard skills to develop.
Absolutely. I think that when I first started, I thought that the more you put down, the better. And as I've sort of gone along, and everyone's laughing because it is so true, you sort of think, when you read legal prose or whatever, you think of these big, long, complicated sentences. But actually, what I have found is that the thing that my clients are always most receptive to is really plain, straightforward, short sentences, not complicated, because they want the average person to be able to read and digest what you've written, and that's the art of it, and that's what takes time to perfect and find your own writing style.
And so, how long have you been a solicitor for now? What's your post-qualification experience, if we call it that way?
I'm about 3.5 years qualified.
Yeah.
And I did 2 years of training.
2 years of training. And so, that's coming on to 6 years, right, of experience. Can you kind of describe what that journey has been like from doing your training and thinking more is better, and then developing your writing skills and just developing the softer skills that were required for your job, and how that looked as you progressed throughout the last 5 or so years?
Well, the first thing I'd say is it's been a journey. It's definitely been a journey. When I first started my training contract, I really had no concept of what it was like to work at a corporate law firm. I'd watched, I hate to be that person, but I'd seen Suits and I'd seen what it was like, and to be a lawyer and how it was portrayed on TV. And I'd had a little bit of work experience prior to getting my training contract, but I had no real idea of what it was like to work in a corporate law firm, and how you can sit in a team that is so what felt like so niche, like an area that I had no idea even existed. So my first seat was a litigation seat, so that involved disputes and going to court and all this sort of the slightly sexier stuff. But you didn't do a lot of drafting. The sort of work that I did was more email based, a lot of document review, and so I didn't get that much experience in actually sitting down and drafting pieces of advice and doing detailed analyses. But then I went into my second seat, which is the one that I eventually chose to qualify into, and that was an advisory role. So I went in there thinking, yeah, great, I've got a lot to say. I'm a chatty person, words come easily to me. So I went in thinking, great, I'll just put everything down, and it has to be this really complicated technical piece of work with lots of legal references and
loads of detail and
footnotes. And I think about that now, and I think, oh God, that must be so awful for my supervisor to have to read, and also try and distill that information and encourage me to that it and remind me that it's a journey, because I used to get, I'd spend hours writing a piece of work, and then I'd get it back and I'd say 10% of what I'd written was there.
Just covered in red marks.
Absolutely. And my boss, actually, who's still my boss today, does like to mark in red pen. And so it's quite a passive aggressive thing to do.
Old school.
But I think just from having those experiences and working with different people and seeing the different ways that people write, I started to work out what styles really resonated with me, what felt like my authentic voice, because what I've learned is that you can't be a parrot for somebody else. It makes your job so much harder. So I would say that even as a qualified lawyer, I think probably only in the last year have I really found my feet with drafting and not sat there with a blank piece of paper at the beginning of, an assignment and thought, how the hell am I going to get through this?
Yeah. I think just really quickly, Alex, I think sort of drawing on that, something that kind of resonates with me and might do with you as well, Alex, both of us being solicitors as well, or qualified at least, is that in the past it was like, you did what we came from, these academic degrees, right? And you're told that you have to write a certain way and you have to reference everything and do loads of research and reference case law and all of that type of stuff. But then what you realize is when you go into the world of work or particularly these types of jobs is, yes, we are kind of information like crunchers and processors, but we've got an understanding of the law and we can read the law, but it's how we present it to the client who isn't so familiar with all of the legalese and technical terms and stuff, and it's finding that balance, which is a skill in itself, I think, that is developed over time. Yeah.
I think what I see, certainly from my perspective, is I would never, unless it was really, really necessary, I am not putting a detailed case law reference in a piece of advice to a client. They don't want to see it. They're not interested. They want to know, what is a piece of information that you're telling me and how does it affect me? And it's as simple as that. And actually, you do need to do that research. You do need to look at the case law, the statute, whatever, but that's not what your client wants to see. And like you said, you act as a conduit. Otherwise, they're lawyers. A lot of the people that I interact with are lawyers. They know where to find the information. If they wanted lots of case law and lots of statute, they'd go and do it themselves.
Exactly.
No, I think what's really interesting about that is clearly prior to entering into the legal sector, you were one of the better writers among your peers, right? But you almost have to, and I found this, like, drop any notion that your writing style is exceptional by any means. And you interact with people who are 20, 30 years deep into their careers, who have seen thousands of people's writing styles, have developed their own years ago, and they will take a red pen to your work. But that is
with pleasure as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I don't know what you guys have experienced. I felt like I've had a much nicer journey in terms of writing. Like, everyone's been very constructive in terms of their feedback, but I think that's definitely part of the journey. And I'm sure now, if you compare how you wrote at the start of your legal career to how you write now, it'd be worlds apart. But there's so much power in that, the ability to convince clients and get a message effectively across and have them ultimately come back to you and seek further advice. That all comes down to how effectively you communicate with them.
Yeah, I would say that my one piece of advice for someone starting out in the legal industry is that leave your ego at the door. You cannot have an ego coming into it, because you really have no idea what you're going to be doing in that job. And at least that was my experience. And the more you can be open-minded and receptive to feedback and be adaptable, the more successful you'll be. And those people that kind of come with an ego find it really hard, because you are at I don't like this turn of phrase, but you are at the bottom of the food chain. Like, you don't know anything, and there are people there that have been doing this for 30 years, and they don't have time sometimes to dress things up in the nicest way. So you have to be resilient, and you have to just be open-minded and know that it's a journey.
Very
I think
sound advice.
Very sound advice, because I think particularly that point on the egocentric type person, because I mean, there's probably something to be said in terms of the sort of, maybe upbringing they've had, where they've, been gassed up throughout the sort of, growing up process. But what I found is a lot of the time is through maybe their academic stage of their life, school, and then university, they were probably some of the more brighter individuals and have received a lot of commendations and a lot of compliments about how well they write, or, how persuasive they are. Yeah. And then they potentially go into like maybe law, into a law firm, and kind of have that same confidence. But as you say, you just have to leave that at the door, because you're no longer like, at the end of university, where you're the oldest, popular, have loads of friends, you're coming in at the bottom of the pecking order, and you've got to do a lot of learning. Yeah,
it's a learned skill at the end of the day. You don't go into it, being a lawyer. You have to be humble, you have to listen to people, and you have to be adaptable. And one of the things that I've definitely learned is some of the best lawyers that I've interacted with haven't been the ones who have gone to, the big star universities, or even Russell groups. They haven't been to those universities, but what they have in abundance is a really great attitude. And those are the ones, to me, when I'm looking at junior lawyers or trainees or work experience students looking to get a job, they're the best ones. I'm not necessarily interested in your qualifications. I'm looking at your attitude.
And as part of that, and we speak to a lot of the people that come on, I think we spoke to Charlie quite a lot about this. I know one thing that's probably been really important to your journey is resilience, and that you would have faced challenges along the way. I think it's all well and good talking about the skills that are necessary at high level, but at the end of the day, our podcast is called Hard Work Beats Talent. And I think it'd be really good to just bring to life some of the challenges that you might have faced and overcome, and how resilience was an important factor in terms of you getting to where you are today.
Where do we start? Day one, I was born.
That was hard.
Not for me personally, but for my mum, it was a bad day. So just a bit about me in terms of my background. I'm one of 5. I'm number 4th in the chain of command, although I like to put myself at number 1 in terms of importance. I went to a state school, a decent state school. But I didn't have a lot of, I certainly didn't know any lawyers, for one. And I didn't, for various reasons, neither of my parents worked for a lot of the time that I was growing up, because my dad had a long-term illness and my mum was his carer. And so I didn't have a lot of insight into sort of getting up, going to work, doing that graft. Although I know certainly that my parents did a lot of unpaid work. Being a parent is just an unpaid job, right? And my siblings didn't pursue academics either. So I found it quite challenging to find my place at school, because I think I was good at school, as in I was academic, but I didn't have much structure or routine. And now as an adult, I felt like that was actually what I was really longing for. So then when it came to sort of doing my A-levels, I went for what I found easiest. And I remember that when I was looking at universities, I didn't really have much input from my mum. And I remember going to the head of sixth form, and he literally just sat me down and was like, well, you're good at this. What about these unis? And to be honest with you, no real thought went into it. So it's been a lot of happenstance to get to where I am, but I certainly only just sort of found my feet after I finished uni. And that's the thing that I would encourage your listeners to have faith in, is that it doesn't necessarily matter like where you've come from, what university you've got, because there's a long old life after uni, and you have the ability to change your path in life if you want to, and if you put the hard work in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more.
And can you just bring it to life a bit? Like you've alluded to it. You went to university. You got a training contract. But like, what did that process look like? Was it all plain sailing?
Absolutely not. So I did an undergraduate degree in English and history. It was a very hands-off degree, and that suited me very well at the time. I had a fantastic social life at uni. But, you know, I only had like 6 hours of contact a week, and that actually set me in really bad habits for being super disciplined and committed to my craft. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't particularly committed at university, and I got a 2-1, but I left with a sense of disappointment in myself that I didn't apply myself, because, and particularly now looking back on it, what a fantastic opportunity that was. You'd never get another opportunity like that. So I did have regret about that, but I sort of qualified. I left university thinking, you know, I've got a 2-1 from a Russell group, you know, I'm quite a clever person, and I had all of this, and this is the whole thing about leaving your ego at the door. I had all of these ideas about what I was going to be and how I was going to get there, and it was only sort of when I was leaving uni did I decide that I wanted to pursue a career in law. I'd sort of entertained it when I was younger, as if that's, you know, not a ridiculous thing to do. And so I left university with all these expectations. I was just going to get a training contract. Bish bash bosh, done. And obviously that wasn't how it played out. I emerged from uni into what I realized was an incredibly competitive market with a bunch of law students who had been putting in the graft for like 3 years, working really hard, had been very disciplined and committed to what they were trying to achieve. So it took me a lot of readjusting and a lot of commitment, again, leaving my ego at the door, having a lot of failed applications, and actually having to, the real life was that I needed to eat and survive. I couldn't just spend 2 years trying to get work experience and not work. So I worked in other industries. I went back home and I worked in retail for a while, all the while trying to sort of hustle and do bits of work experience on the side. But it was a journey, and actually I'm very grateful that it happened that way, because when I turned up, I wasn't one of those people that had just come out of uni and had gone to, you know, an Oxbridge or whatever, and thought that everything was going to come really easily to me. I knew that it meant a lot for me to be there, and I wasn't prepared to mess it up.
So what was the gap between you finishing your undergrad and then you eventually getting your training contract and starting that?
So I think it was 3 or 4 years, because the way that training contracts work is that you don't get them, you normally get them 2 years in advance. I was very fortunate that my firm offered me a year in advance. So I can't remember, it's such a long time ago now. It was 2 years, and then I had to wait a year. And all the while I was working in non-legal roles, which proved really, really valuable to me going into my training contract.
You probably helped build some of these other softer skills that you've mentioned already.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, that's really interesting. So your journey sounds to some extent quite similar to mine, because went to state school. I myself, I didn't go to like a Russell Group university, but yeah, so it made it that little bit harder as well, because it was, you know, it wasn't sort of like highly ranked or anything, but sort of, I didn't actually know I wanted to go and do law. Well, I didn't know I wanted to be a lawyer at the end of it. So I completely can kind of resonate with that and have that in common with you. It is a journey when you're going into university. Like, as a lot of our listeners probably will listen to this, think, well, I don't know what I would do. I'm like 18, 19, or, you know, how do you decide? Just don't put so much pressure on yourself, really. It will come to you.
Yeah.
And it could take several extra years. And did you find that necessarily like disadvantaged you in any way?
I don't think it disadvantaged me. I think that, no, I really can't think that it did, to be honest with you. I think that when you come out of university, you have a lot of preconceptions about how things will be for you. And even in that 2 or 3 year gap between me and some of the people that had come straight out of uni and started their training contracts, I felt so much more prepared and mature. So actually, I think it was really advantageous to me. At the time, I didn't feel like it. I felt quite conscious of it, which is really silly now because I just think 2 years is irrelevant. And actually, we have we see, you know, trainees that are in their 30s, 40s, 50s. They're the best ones because they're there and they take it super seriously and they're just not there to mess about.
I was going to say just that. I remember when I was doing a vacation scheme at a law firm, and there was someone on the same vacation scheme, the internship, who was, I think, 32. Went on, got a training contract. Like, they'll be probably senior associate now, and it's kind of never too late. If you know what it is you want to do, don't feel like that ship sailed, because there are people far older often who are getting there. And the point you made about what's like a couple of years really resonates. I was actually having lunch with someone earlier today, and we're both on this program at work, and they were saying, oh, well, I want to get to the next stage, and if I move to this team, maybe that will delay it, and like I've got to think I'm going to be this age. And I said, well, what's a year or two actually going to mean? Like,
in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, it's an endless pursuit.
Exactly. And if I would say, and I said to them, it's probably more important to find something that makes you happy in the time that it takes to do that, rather than to just get some title as quickly as possible but live a miserable life. So I think you taking your time, you finding your feet, like knowing you outside of this, I know that it has worked out really well, and some of the things that might have seemed like setbacks in the past have probably been really pivotal to your journey. So no, I think the listeners should take that away, certainly, from your story. One
of the things that I wanted to say on the thing of it's never too late, a bit of a side story, but my mum went back into, she's a doctor, but she didn't go back into medicine until she was 50, and we were grown-ups, and she got so many no's when she went down to our local hospital and said, you know, I qualified as a doctor in, I don't know, the 80s or whatever, and people just weren't prepared to take her seriously, and she had to do months and months of unpaid work experience as a 50-year-old woman, which that again, to have to overcome the ego and to know what you want your future to be like and do anything to get yourself there. I have so much respect for that. And she, after months and months of grafting, she had to go back into work as a junior doctor, working with, you know, junior doctors who were literally the age of my sister. And that's her calling in life, and she's never really had a bad day, and she's never regretted it, and she has taken the most convoluted path to, you know, to get to where she is, but she is an absolute testimony to it's never too late, and to pursue what really makes you happy, because, you know, she's now in her 60s, she absolutely loves her job, it gives her purpose, and if you asked her, she would not regret a single step that she's taken, because it makes her absolutely fantastic at her job.
Yeah, no, that's so sick. I love stories like that.
Go on, Mum.
Yeah, go on, Mrs. Rachel. No, that's really, really, really great story. I love that. I love that a lot. And what was her background, just out of interest, like before she went and did that?
So she used to be an anaesthetist and had gone to uni in the ordinary
so she had
way.
some medical background as well.
She was pretty senior as an anaesthetist, and then life got in the way. She had kids. My dad was really sick, and she never got to prioritize herself and her career. She's you know, she's such an incredibly bright person that's so, if you knew her, you would just know that, you know, looking after people is her calling in life. And for such a long time she didn't do that, and now to see her with that purpose back, and to really humble herself and go in and basically have to grovel until somebody just went, okay, stop asking, we'll give you some work, that's fine.
But you have to do that.
Yeah,
you have to do that. Listen, I've got a PhD in that.
PhD in groveling.
My tea making skills are elite. I'm telling you, and they have to be. They have to be. Like, you know what I mean? The amount of no's I didn't get a training contract, so the amount of no's I got there. And then, I mean, look, I qualified 2 years ago, right? I'm 34. I was 32. Like, I just really want to stress that point that we're making, in that it's never too late. Like, when I got to the point after uni that were towards finishing uni that I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, I just said, right, I'm going to do it. Yeah. Even if I have to start right at the bottom. I'll be a paralegal, gain experience or whatever, but you'll get there. And for those people that are listening and are a bit older, maybe around our age or even older, and thinking, actually, I've worked out what my calling is, what my passion is. But, you know, obviously people have to prioritize family and their responsibilities. But
there is always like a way in, right? If it's like that compounding effect that we've talked about before, whether you do a little bit on the side, you do a bit of reading, start with that, and then a bit of experience here and there, and then knock on a few doors, and you know, grovel a bit, and that little bit of experience could be your way in.
By and large, people want to help the underdog as well. That's what that's been the message that I got from my mum, and people really respect a good attitude, and that's why I keep coming back to that, because I'm rooting so much more for the work experience student who I actually had this as a situation a couple of years ago, who'd come from an inner city school in Tower Hamlets and had really didn't fit the profile of what people think a lawyer looks like, which is whatever that is. It's a very irritating thing, but you know, people are biased towards accents and things like that, and it shouldn't be that way. He was the most phenomenal work experience student I've ever had. He was so switched on. He was hustling left, right, and centre.
It's the enthusiasm, though, isn't it?
He was just amazing. And then I've had so many work experience students come in that are just there because their parents have told them they have to come in. You know, their dad's a lawyer, and it's just part of the course. And I just think, boring. Next, move on. I want those. I like the underdogs. They're my favourite people to work with, and honestly, they make the best lawyers.
So just on all of that, because I think part of the problem can be with respect to people thinking it's too late is comparison. Someone 10 years younger than me is more senior than me, or people who are my peers are actually have more senior titles. I had to go through it a little bit. Like, I was pushing the next kind of rung in the legal profession. It's like, actually, I've got to delay that for a couple of years to take hopefully a bigger step in the finance profession. But there's a quote which said you should only ever compare yourself to yourself yesterday and to no one else, because comparison ultimately is the thief of all joy. But I would alter that slightly to say, if you're saying it's too late or that it can't be done, you should only ever compare yourself to yourself yesterday or Rachel's mum, who did it at 50.
Yeah. yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
absolutely. I think that if you have expectations of how things are going to go, generally speaking, you're only going to be disappointed, because life takes so many unexpected twists and turns, and you have to be open to new and different opportunities. Like Alex, you're a great example of that. Your career was very well defined for you in private practice at a law firm, and you just switched it up 180. And a year ago, you didn't know that you would be there. But if you had been so focused on your expectations, you would have been blind to the opportunity that was right in front of you.
Absolutely.
Nice. So, and
No.
Yeah, mate, I thought, okay, cheers. So kind of bringing it back a bit to your day-to-day job before we kind of move on to some, more into your private life. Well, family,
hang on,
family,
and
I know what we're talking about. So we've alluded to this several times when we've spoken about our careers and other people who had on that have been lawyers, solicitors as well. So do you work in-house or in private practice?
So I work in private practice in what's called a corporate law firm in the city. So we do all types of law apart from family law, immigration law, that type of thing. So anything from corporate M&A, as Alex alluded to earlier, to litigation for big corporates, working for high net worth individuals, that type of thing.
And sorry, I feel like we're jumping a bit about here. You have had experience on the other side, haven't you, as part of your training contract in-house? And it'd be good to just bring that to life a bit and explain how that's helped with your career.
Yes.
And different, like the comparison between the two, so that people can maybe understand, maybe they're suited better for one or the other. Yeah.
So in my last seat of my training contract, I got asked to go on a secondment, which is essentially where you work for a client. You still work for your law firm, but they sort of parachute you in, and you're a resource for the client. You go to their office, you get their computers, you might even get some nice stash while you're there. But
bit of swag,
a bit of swag, a free water bottle, a few pens, whatever you can get your hands on. So I went in there for my last 6 months of my training contract, and I worked at a global insurer in their retail products division. So I helped launch some pretty well-known insurance distribution arrangements. That sounds so boring, but lots of sort of high street insurance that you might think of. And so then I did that 6 month secondment, and then I went back as a qualified lawyer on the Monday. And then on the Tuesday, I went right back into the same secondment just as a newly qualified lawyer for a year. And my job there was fantastic. It was really, really varied. I got to work a lot with the business. There was less structure, I think, and hierarchy in a good way in when you work in-house, such that there is really no limit on what you can do, and you've got lots of different opportunities to move into different areas and get different experience. I don't know if Nikki, do you find that? Is that one of the
yeah absolutely love? Yeah, because I work in commercial law now, but it's because I work for more of a large US corporate, so we've got a big team and much more defined teams within our legal team. So we have commercial, corporate, tax, privacy and things like that. But in previous places that I'd worked in-house, you had to be more of a generalist. Yeah. So just be willing to dip in and out of different types of areas of law and disciplines, which I really enjoyed. That's why I love working in-house so much, because today I was working on a sponsorship agreement, and tomorrow I'll be negotiating some sort of telecoms interconnection deal, big complicated contracts for one of our customers. So I really like that side. So yeah, definitely in-house is broader and more varied, whereas as private practice, you'll probably find that if you go into a particular area, you'll be more in that.
Certainly in my experience as well, I got to work a lot more with a variety of people. So in my role in private practice, I typically am only really ever speaking to other lawyers. I'm speaking to the lawyers in-house. And sometimes I'll speak with the business, when I'm trying to work out what a particular product does or whatever. But by and large, I'm just speaking with lawyers. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about being in secondment is that I knew so many different people in the business that did so many different things. And I learned so much from them on the commercial side. And also to just get a bigger picture of, there's a life outside of law. Yeah. And when someone's asking you a question, don't just give them a legal answer. They don't want that. They want the commercials. They want to understand, practically speaking, what the information that you're trying to relay to them means. So it definitely made me a better lawyer for sure.
Yeah. No, it's super awesome. I that whole the diversity of the teams that you work with is really great. I mean, I work with the technical people that understand the products we sell, finance people, regulatory people. Yeah. So some deals we need to really understand, well, how do we sell a particular type of service in China or India or Russia? And you're like, wow, there are all these nuances and differences, and it kind of broadens your horizons a little bit as well.
Fantastic. So we've heard a lot about your kind of professional career. I think for some of the listeners, it'd be quite useful to hear a bit more about your personal background, and you alluded to it a bit with your parents, but can you just give us a bit of an overview of your social, economic and educational background and your parents' upbringing as well? Yeah,
so there's quite a lot to unpack there. So
well, you've touched on the school. You went to state school.
Yeah, exactly.
So we get that, and it's kind of going from there, I suppose, would be good.
Yeah, so I went to state school. I went to a Catholic school. And it was a good school. I'm not going to sit here and say I had a really tough time at state school. What I would say was that I felt a lot of the time that I was at school, I felt like a bit of an outlier because, my parents didn't have any money, and kids can be kind of mean. And, if you don't have the latest Converse, I remember that being the thing that you felt a little bit on the outside. Yeah. And I felt in a lot of ways that I couldn't be I didn't want to excel at school. I know that sounds like a really stupid thing, because I'm not saying that I necessarily would have, but I already felt a bit on the outside. So then on top of that, being someone that's like a really keen studier would have, I felt at the time, which now looking back is completely the opposite of what I would say to somebody now. But I didn't want to feel like I was any further out on the perimeter. So so I didn't try very hard at school, which is really just, such a wasted opportunity. And I was lucky that I got into sixth form. I did appallingly in my first year because I didn't try. And to be honest with you, that gave me a kick up the arse because I got really bad results. And so I had to turn that ship around for my A levels.
Can I just ask, if you don't mind, obviously sharing this? When you say like you didn't sort of try too hard at school, in your like GCSEs, how well or bad did you do? Just to give a sense of like what is the bar for someone in your position now.
So I was quite middling. To be honest with you, my dad had passed away the year that I was doing my GCSEs, and so I was in quite a lot of chaos. And actually, I think I did pretty well, all things considered. I got a couple of C's, some B's, and a couple of A's. But I knew within myself that I hadn't really tried hard, and that I felt like I was just spiraling. And I think a lot of your listeners will understand that, like, being a teenager is hard enough as it is,
especially
and then
now.
especially now, and then when you've got lots of people have very complicated family backgrounds.
Absolutely.
And for a long time I felt like that was my identity, and I almost, in a way, I made a lot of excuses for myself, if I'm honest with you, about I'm not going to achieve because I've had a difficult time. And in a way, it stopped me from putting myself out there and really trying and wanting to succeed. And then it took getting really bad grades and seeing people who put the hard work in do so well, and knowing that there wasn't some magic formula, it was just putting the work in, and the sense of pride that they had. I felt quite a lot of shame, and that was the impetus that I needed for change.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I think that can all be summed up in hard work beats talent.
Well, quite right. I didn't want to say it, guys, but
thank you for sharing that with us, Rachel. That was really open of you, and sorry to hear you went through such a difficult time at that period of your life as well. It's, as you say, it's hard enough, but to go through something like that, and I think for a lot of our listeners, there is that aspect of the complexity within your personal life and your upbringing. Whether at home or maybe just even the socioeconomic sort of background that you have, it's quite easy to label yourself, and I think I went through a period of that myself. Being a immigrant and started life not being able to speak the language and blah blah blah. But I think look for that little gem, like you found in your A levels where you didn't get particularly good grades, whatever that is for you, find it and just harness it and use it to inspire you, because like Alex said, actually, you're a great example of you're intelligent and you have an abundance of talent and knowledge, but when you don't apply that,
absolutely,
it's the hard work that is ultimately the oil in the engine that helps it run smoothly.
Absolutely. Particularly in something like law. There's no such thing as a talented trainee, in my opinion, in the sense of it's a learned skill, which is what I said earlier. Hard work is the differentiator between, and not just in law, but what makes people good at their job and what makes them excellent at their job. And so for me, it's always, now that I look back and I reflect on what was the turning point for me, it was realizing that hard work was going to get me to where I wanted to be, and no amount of charm, no amount of just thinking that I could get myself into places, or that I was special. We all are special, but really there's thousands of special people out there who at the point when I was trying to apply for a training contract wanted it more than me, knew how to hustle a lot harder than me, and put in the hard work. And so, you have to learn those lessons early on.
Yeah.
But it's never too late, even if you learn that lesson a bit later on.
And can I ask, if you don't mind, you obviously mentioned your dad passing, but previously you mentioned that time where your dad was unwell and your mum was his primary carer. And obviously you must have been quite young at that point as well.
Yeah.
How did you find it within yourself to kind of get the balance between, like, say, school and, you know, your social life, growing up and finding your own feet in the world and your own place, whilst going, you know, seeing your family go through quite a tough time as well? Because I'm sure that's a large part of where, like, your resilience comes from, right?
Yeah. If I'm honest with you, I didn't. My dad was ill for all of my living memory, and that actually really defined a lot of who I was for a really long time, because it was really hard to have structure in my household. And I'm one of 5, which is chaos enough as it is. But it was really, really hard to find that structure and that routine, which was really what I was craving. And because neither of my parents were working, we had no money. And I really struggled with that, because, you know, I felt a lot of pressure when I was younger to, again, I say it again, have some Converse. And my parents couldn't afford that. And I think...
I hope you have a wardrobe of Converse now, by the way.
I know. And my therapist is like, why have you got to think about Converse? No, so then to be honest with you, the turning point for me was seeing what my life had been for such a long time, and then realizing what my life could be, and realizing that the only thing that was going to get me there was me. And
strong.
And that was the turning point for me, that I just had to, you know, put my big girl pants on and get on with it, because it's hard. It's a hustle, and you won't get anywhere unless you put the work in.
Yeah.
And on that, you mentioned that you had kind of your mum as a role model growing up, and like seeing what she went through. I'm sure as you got older and appreciated that more and more, like it became more, I guess, important to you in your outlook. But were there any other kind of key influences along your journey in between, say, your GCSEs and like where you are today, and what role have they played in your life?
So that's a good question.
How about sorry to cut you off.
Ahead.
How about we break it down to, like, key influences in your early life phase?
Okay.
And then, you know, say 20s onwards.
Okay. Key influences in my early years, I would say it's just my mum, to be honest with you. I will always come back to my mum in thinking about what hard work looks like and what is possible if you put your mind to it. And that, no matter how bad a day I think I've had, no matter how hard I think my struggle is, I just have to have a conversation with my mum. And I just realised that the world is actually set up for me. The opportunities are there. I just have to want to take them. And there are a lot of people who don't have those opportunities that I've had. And I feel very humbled by that, and that I don't want to waste those opportunities anymore. So yeah, my mum, I think, has always been my go-to inspo. And then sort of growing up, getting a bit older, you know, for a long time, I don't think I really had any mentors, which was why I sort of floated around for such a long time. But a lot of when I left uni, so in that intervening period, I think, I floated around. And then when I left uni, I just interacted with some incredibly ambitious people. And I would say that, and I know you guys like quotes on this podcast, that you are the sum total of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I just started to surround myself with people who wanted to get somewhere and didn't make excuses for themselves and put the hard work in. And I felt a little bit of shame sometimes, that I felt sorry for myself that things weren't going my way. And I felt really inspired by the people I surrounded myself with. I had really good influences around me, people that encouraged me to have structure and routine. And that was just the best thing for me.
Yeah. No, that sounds awesome. And yeah, just on the theme of quotes and on the topic that you were talking on, it's, you know, it's when you're in the room And if you're the smartest person in the room, then you're probably in the wrong room. But you should always be in a room where you're being stretched and you're being challenged.
100%.
You know, so I think it's great that you found that sort of group that helped you to develop yourself and give you the like encouragement and, you know, ambition to move forward.
I think also you have to work out who your people are and surround yourself with people who genuinely want to see you do really well, that want
So
to give
important.
you the most sage advice, that want to see you succeed. And actually I found that I'm so motivated by that. I'm so motivated by being around people who just want the best for me. I don't want to let those people down. You know,
there's a lot of haters out there.
There's a lot of haters, but you know, there's also a lot of lovers out there.
Absolutely.
And you just got to find them, and that takes a bit of time. And so, yeah, I mean, leaving uni, I wasn't quite sure which direction I was going to go in, but those people really helped me by guiding me to get to where I am. So I owe a lot to those people. I won't shout them out specifically, but they know who they are.
Nice.
So now that you are where you are, do you give back, and what form does that take, if so, and why is it important for you to do so?
So I do bits of mentoring. I think that I could always say I could do more, if I'm honest with you, but I do mentoring. So at the moment I'm involved in a program whereby we mentor a group of girls that are in a inner city school in London. I think they're in year 9 going into year 10, so they're in a really formative stage of their life, and I really identify with that sort of feeling of just some of these girls, they just don't know where they fit, and so my job is to sort of guide them on their path into GCSEs and what that looks like, building skills outside of school, because your academic achievements are only a part of the picture. So how can we build up their soft skills? How can we make these girls feel more confident about themselves? How do we make them feel like they belong in a room where maybe society is telling them that they don't belong? So I find that an incredibly enriching experience. And even in the time that I've had the same mentee for the last few months, and when we first started talking, she was so shy, and I just felt like I talked the entire time. And over the last couple of sessions, really, we've built such a fantastic rapport, and she's really come out of her shell, and I'm seeing all of these things that we talked about come to life. So I really enjoy the mentoring. I feel like it gives me a purpose outside of my job, and an excuse to use some of the skills and the insights that I've learned to really help lift the next generation up, because there's not enough people in the legal industry that are like me or like you, Nikki, or like you, Alex. Like there's not enough of that. So it's really important that we pave the way for the next generation.
Yeah, and I think that's hugely important. Agree with you wholeheartedly, because I think for anyone who is even in a privileged position as we are, quite frankly, to find that one little thing that is like a purpose that it doesn't have to be huge and elaborate, and it doesn't have to take up loads of your time, but the whole idea behind having something purposeful is that it benefits others. So if you can give someone that 1% extra encouragement or whatever it is, then I think that's really great.
And I think the other point on that is to the younger listeners, I guess, realize that there are people like Rachael out there that do want to help, and all it takes is a quick Google for a mentoring scheme if you do want to find someone to connect with, and that can make a massive difference. I know from my personal journey, people a little bit further ahead made a huge amount of difference and continue to do so today, to be honest. And I think it always makes sense to leverage the wisdom of other people rather than have to learn through your own painful experiences. So yeah, fantastic that you do it, but also if you are looking for a mentor, just Google it. I'm sure you'll find a scheme that's suitable to you.
Yeah.
And someone that may even love Converses more than you do.
I am willing to mentor in exchange for Converses.
Love that.
So to wrap up, we ask a few questions just to, I guess, get your real reflections on your life so far. And the first one we often ask is, what would be the biggest piece of advice you would give yourself at 18 today?
So many pieces of advice I'd give myself, but the one that really stands out to me is be patient and be kind. Be kind to yourself when things aren't going well, but also be kind to other people, because, you know, it's... I certainly want to live this life like it's a team sport, and there are so many people that are out there that are willing to help you, and you in turn have to help other people. So being kind and being patient has been something that I've looked for in other people, and I've looked to emulate myself.
And out of interest, what piece of advice do you think you would give yourself today in 10 years' time?
I think that I would probably give myself the same advice, to be patient, because I am constantly looking for the next thing to do and wanting to achieve. It's addictive in a lot of ways. I think the legal industry and in lots of other industries, it's made up of a bunch of insecure overachievers. So you can never do enough.
We've heard that one before. Love it.
Oh, really? Common theme of this podcast. And so again, I would just say to myself, be kind, be patient, and be open to the fact that things maybe won't go as they planned, but there's no parallel universe that you get to play out all of the alternative ways that your life might pan out. So just be open-minded. That's what I'd like to think that my 10 years time that I'd say that's some good advice.
We'll get you back on then and see.
Yeah, 100%.
10 years time, I'll be completely jaded. I'll have exited the legal profession.
No, that's sick. So yeah, patience, kindness. Love that.
Goes a long way.
It goes a long way. It does. And just, finally, from a personal development perspective, would you recommend any particular maybe books or podcasts that you have in mind?
Or TV shows?
Or TV shoys.
Well, on the subject of TV shows, I am a big believer that you deserve downtime, and on a serious note, like I think that there's a lot of pressure to be on all of the time, and I've seen it with a lot of friends and even with myself that you feel like you always have to be going somewhere and proving to someone that you're doing something, hustling left, right, and centre. And yes, you absolutely do have to do that, but it's really important to have downtime. And so I'm a big advocate of watching trash television, because, you know, I can't be serious Rachael lawyer all day. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
So
Any shout outs?
I will not disclose the trash television that I won't let it be on the record. That's a true lawyer. In terms of podcasts, again, I actually don't listen to a lot of podcasts that are focused on driving you in a particular direction or giving you lots of advice. I like a light-hearted podcast, because I genuinely listen to them before I go to bed. So I'm trying to switch off. What I would say that I don't do as much as I'd like to, but that I have used in the past in times of stress is apps and podcasts about mindfulness and making sure that you get a good night's sleep. So like meditation apps that you really empower you to switch off, because the rest of the world is encouraging us to be on at all times. So watch that trash television, listen to those stupid podcasts that make you laugh. That's my message for me in 10 years time as well, actually.
I think it's a really good point to end on, because you can look at the three of us, or listen to the three of us and see three lawyers and think, oh, it's serious.
Yeah.
But actually part of being able to be on is the ability to be able to switch off.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's just not sustainable.
Absolutely not. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. No, I agree. I'm actually marathoning through Married at First Sight Australia at the moment.
Completed it.
Talking of trash TV, great watch, great for switching off. But
can I just say, we call it trash TV, but it gets better viewership than some of the more highbrow stuff. I think we need
exactly. Temper that. I mean, it's very entertaining.
Yeah,
it is a great watch. But anyway, that's what I watched to switch off. Alex, any closing thoughts?
No, just a big thank you. I've found that really illuminating and have enjoyed it, and really appreciated you coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you, Rachael. That was a really honest discussion. I've really enjoyed it, got to know you a bit better as well. And yes, you've got some great experience, and feel honoured to have had you on. So thank you very much. Before we close, I just want to share a quick quote that I came across last week, which I quite liked, and on the theme of what we've been discussing today, I think it's quite an interesting one. And so that is, in life, there are two pains: the pain of discipline and the pain of regret. The pain of discipline weighs ounces, and the pain of regret weighs tons. And I think, alluding to parts of your story, I think that's probably quite poignant, and I just wanted to share that with everyone because I quite enjoyed it.
Lots to unpack there, and thank you for sharing that with us, Nikki. But yeah, I hope everyone's enjoyed this as much as I have today.
Same here. Thank you very much for tuning in. We hope to have you on listening to our next one. So please give us a like, a follow, subscribe on all the platforms. Yeah, comment, Instagram, YouTube, and the handle is @HardWorkBeatsTalent Podcast. And if you want to reach out, drop us a DM or something, and we'll get back in touch. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank
Catch
you
you later.